At 4ZZZ, we acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we broadcast. We pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging of the Turrbal and Jagera people. We acknowledge that their sovereignty over this land was never ceded.
And we stand in solidarity with them.
Tranzmission on 4ZZZ, amplifying the trans and gender diverse community of Meanjin, Brisbane and beyond.
My name is Ray, I use they, them pronouns, and you are listening to Tranzmission on 4ZZZ. Hope you liked our new show intro. That was very exciting. I'm so glad that we got to pop that on this morning. Very excited. Thank you to Ez for creating that awesome show intro, and we'll have a amazing show outro as well. That's a new bad boy. I'm very excited today for today's show. As I said, my name is Ray. I use they, them pronouns. And previously, I have been chilling out in the 4ZZZ studios and, doing some interviews, being on air. But I've recently, leveled up. And today's my first show solo, which is very exciting. And today I've got some news for you, and I'll also be playing a chat that I had with Zoe Terakes, who is an incredible author who lives in Naarm, and I'll be chatting with them about their book Eros, Queer Myths for Lovers. And I'll also have a very special guest in studio, and we'll be chatting about RPGs and poetry and zines. But I want to have a chat about some trans news that has just come through this morning. There is a possible loophole in Queensland's recently reinstated puberty blocker ban, which could allow hundreds of transgender children to resume treatment through the public health system. The government's new directive rushed through just 7 hours after the court ruled that the original January ban was unlawful, only applies to quote-unquote new patients from October 28, meaning that children who were forced into private care earlier this year should be excluded from the ban and allowed back into the public system. LGBTI legal service representative Matilda Alexander, who we had the privilege of having on the show last month, said, "Our client is not a, quote, new patient under the ministerial directive because she received gender-affirming care privately in response to the restrictions imposed by the directive issued on the 28th of January 2025, nor, however, is she a current patient under the ministerial direction." They have asked the Supreme Court to make orders that, quote-unquote, new patient doesn't include anyone under 18 who received gender-affirming care before the 28th of October 2025. If the Supreme Court does this, says Matilda Alexander, it will pave the way not only for her to receive gender-affirming healthcare from the Queensland Children's Gender Clinic, this is the young person in question, but for numerous other trans young people in similar circumstances. A discrimination and human rights case filed by the LGBTI Legal Service is still ongoing. In addition to this news, Queensland Health Minister Tim Nicholls is still refusing to release the report that was due a week ago from his review into gender-affirming healthcare for trans youth. We deserve to see what this review says. If you head to Trans Justice Project, you can look at more information on action that you can take. They are encouraging people to email Tim Nicholls to demand the immediate release of the report and reinstate care. Additionally, you can also head to the protest, which is happening on Wednesday the 10th of December at Speaker's Corner at 7 a.m, where Tim Nicholls has been invited to speak at a breakfast for World AIDS Day hosted at Parliament House. The independent review of the Queensland Children's Gender Service has now presumably been handed to the government, and it's time for Tim Nicholls to make a decision and save the lives of kids who need access to this care. In even more news, the 2026 census is set to occur on Tuesday, August the 11th, 2026, and will ask questions on both sex recorded at birth and gender, according to the ABS website. The sex recorded at birth question is included in the population section. Responses to the sex recorded at birth and gender questions will be used to generate data on trans and gender diverse populations. In identifying their gender, participants will be able to choose from options including man, woman, non-binary, another term, specify, or choose not to answer, according to the questions released by the Australian Bureau of Statistics. Another additional question on sexual orientation will ask Australians about how they consider their own sexuality and the nature of their romantic or sexual attraction to other people. The options for that question will include straight, gay or lesbian, bisexual, another term, don't know, or prefer not to answer. There's also a change to the question relating to country of birth of a person's parents, which includes the addition of the words, this could be a parent of any gender.
How many genders are there?
I don't know. I just got here.
My name is Ray. I use they, them pronouns, and you are listening to Tranzmission on 4ZZZ. And I am thrilled to be showcasing the interviews that I did with Zoe Terakes. Zoe has recently released their first book, Eros, Queer Myths for Lovers, which is a stunning collection of short stories, and it's a lot of queer and trans retellings of myths that you would, may have learned in school, Zeus, Eurydice, Icarus, and it's an incredible book. I was very excited to chat with them about it. And you also may know Zoe Terakes from their acting credits, which include Nine Perfect Strangers, Wentworth, and also the Marvel Studio series Ironheart. So this was my amazing chat with Zoe Terakes. My name is Ray. I use they, them pronouns, and I am so thrilled to have the author of Eros, Queer Myths for Lovers with me today. Do you want to introduce yourself and your pronouns and a bit more about you?
Yes, I'm Zoe Terakes, and my pronouns are they, he, and I wrote this book. I wrote Eros.
And it's an incredible book. I came from a book group meeting last night where we were just honestly so thrilled to read this book. It's a queer book group. And I think one of the things that people loved most about it was how queer and trans it is. For listeners who don't know about Eros, did you want to tell us a bit more about the book?
Yeah, so it's a book of short stories and 5 queer and trans myths, 5 short stories, and a lot of them take place in Crete, where my family is from, which is an island sort of in between, under Greece, above North Africa, to the left of Turkey, to the right of southern Italy, and it's a very old island. It's a very ancient island and was home to the Minoans thousands and thousands of years ago. And so a lot of the stories come from there, and they sort of creep forward in time, and so they start in ancient Crete, and then the last one is set in the 90s in King's Cross.
Which that was one of the comments that people made, was loving the the trajectory and the way that the stories had this kind of intentional flow through history. I thought that was really unique. Was that how intentional was the planning of the book and the stories?
Yeah, not very.
Because it came across as perfection.
That's good. No, I didn't plan it at all. I wrote them all out of order, and then I sort of let the stories, it sounds so wanky, but let them try to listen to the myths and I guess figure out how they wanted to be told. And I was going to write them all in ancient Greece and ancient Crete. But then Hermaphroditus came along, that last story, and I was like, I just, for some reason, don't feel like this story wants to be told there, or like it has and needs new life, or I don't know. I just got this feeling, and all my ideas for it that were coming up were all modern, and the characters are all like drug dealers, and you know, like I was like, fuck, what is this, you know? So I just listened to it, and then that changed the whole book, you know. Then I went back, and Artemis, the second last one, is set in the 70s in Lismore, and then you really see the middle one as sort of the bridge between, I suppose, the ancient world and the modern world.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like even though you're like, oh, this is a bit wanky, like I totally get it. Like I think like when I write certain like poems or whatever, like they kind of tell me what they need. It sounds really strange, but like they, you know, they're like, oh yeah, this is the form that it needs to take, or this is, you know, whatever. Yeah, and I think like what I love about each of the stories is like how, I mean, they are poetic. They're incredibly rich as well, and like they don't. There's like the book isn't. It's not like a really thick book, but it felt like I'd like lived so many lives when I read it, and that I'd like experienced so much, and it was so like rich and beautiful. When did you start writing the stories?
Start of 2023. So what's that? Almost 3 years ago now. They've been with me a long time, and kind of have had, you know, 1,000 different relationships with them over that time. Like, you know, I've probably fucking hated all of them. Oh, can't swear on radio, sorry.
Oh no, that's we'll just put in a language warning. It's chill.
Okay,
we got you.
Okay, yeah, I've like fucking hated them all at certain points and loved them all at certain point. Like, you know, it's like the relationship with what you're writing changes based on the day, I suppose. But yeah, they've been with me a minute now.
Yeah, I do feel like there's every so often I'll look back at something and I'm like, no, why did I write that? And then the next minute I'm like, that is the best thing that I've ever done in my entire existence.
Literally. It's so deceiving. You're like, I don't know who to trust anymore.
I know, right? And I'm like, I guess both things can be true at once, but also...
Yeah. I'd like a bit of objectivity at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, do you, in this moment of time now, do you have a favorite myth that's in the book, or one that wasn't included?
Ooh, good question. I mean, I always say the first one and the last one are my favorites in the book. But then I read parts of, you know, the middle three and I'm like, oh, love those. But I think I think about the first one and the last one the most probably. But I mean, there's so many myths, and there's so many myths. There's like little myths as well that are inside those myths that I find really awesome. You know, like story of scarab beetle, and you know, a lot of Egyptian myths as well. But yeah, I think the one that I'm most familiar with at the moment is the last one, because I'm adapting it into a play as we speak, which is amazing. And
it's wild.
It's your head fuck. Yeah, it is wild. Wild. Sometimes I think not in a good way. Sometimes like, what am I doing? But yeah, that's probably the one I'm kind of in conversation with the most at the moment.
I love that. And look, if listeners haven't like picked up the book and read that myth we're talking about, hermaphroditus, did you want to like give us a I don't know, quick 101 of the story?
Yeah, I mean, content warning. There is essay in the last two stories. And yeah, the last story, I mean, the original story of Hermaphroditus is that the son of Hermes and Aphrodite, Hermaphroditus, is walking in a field or a forest, and this nymph, this river nymph, comes up to him and says, "Can I kiss you?" So, no, thank you. Keeps walking, sees a river. He's like, "Oh my gosh, how beautiful." Swims, doesn't realize it's her river, and she comes up out of the water and prays that she assaults him, and she prays their bodies be bound together forever, and they are, and that is where we get the word hermaphrodite from Hermaphroditus. And then Hermaphroditus went on to be worshipped. She was a goddess, and people love her, so they should. She's amazing. And I took that myth and set it in King's Cross in the 90s, where hermaphroditus starts as this like, kind of like rough Greek boy hanging around with, these beautiful other log boys. There's a Greek boy, Palestinian boy, and a Lebanese boy, and they all kick around together and fly out and get fucked up together. And hermaphroditus and Mahmoud, who's his crush, have this kind of incredible, beautiful sex. And then the drug dealer, who's a Turkish woman, assaults hermaphroditus, and they become one. And then the story goes from there.
And I think what I liked about the story was it made me feel like, especially like the essay part of it made me feel incredibly like uncomfortable and distressed. But then there was this gorgeous story of, like, without spoiling it for people, there's this, it's such a gorgeous story of becoming and of found family. And it was just like, and, finding like a job that, you're kind of like, drawn to and stuff. And like, it was really, I really loved the fact that it was sex worker positive. Yeah, I don't know. It was definitely the story that I've probably thought about the most.
That's good.
Out of all
That's
of them.
good.
Yeah. And you said it's going to be a play. That's exciting. So is there anything you can tell us listeners?
Yes, it's going to be, there's a stage, it's just an early draft of the play at the moment, but there's going to be a staged reading at as a part of the Trans Theatre Festival, which is taking place on Gadigal country at Carriage Works and in Naarm at Malthouse. There's some amazing trans work. We've got Travis Allen Banza, Lace Chase, Kakatapui by Daily Rangi, and myself. And
Amazing.
yeah, so kind of the performances range from like fully ready staged productions to mine, which is just a rough draft, but yeah, it'll be really cool. And if you're in town, you should definitely come. That's in January.
Amazing. Okay. I was like, why is this not happening right here, right now in my lounge room? I was like, that sounds phenomenal.
Yeah. I mean, the play is already very different to the story in the book. There's just like structural things that had to change, because obviously in the book, the first half of that story is like a freight train, and then the second half just really spacious and breathes a lot more, and you just can't do that in a play because it's boring.
That's really interesting.
You can't hold an audience's attention like that. Yeah.
Because I think that was something that I really found was like the language shift. And yeah, as you said, like it's sort of in that second half of it, like really like there's more space, there's more like breathing room, and it feels more peaceful almost. Yeah.
Yeah. And that feeling still comes in the play, but if it just, if you spend the first 40 minutes of something on a freight train and the last 40 minutes of something going, you just can't really hold somebody's attention for 40 minutes doing that, So structurally it's quite different, but the end feeling is the same, I hope.
I think I'd be like remiss if, as we're Tranzmission, the trans show on 4ZZZ, if I didn't talk about, like, obviously we've talked about like how incredibly trans this book is, but I think one of the things that like made me I don't know, I kind of have a little bit of a cry when I read like your preface where you talk about you said these stories are our stories, and that like in a contemporary setting we're often viewed as like a problem to be solved, and that in these times, please return to these stories. We are ancient. The world has never existed. The world without us has never existed, and it never will. And that to me was just like so hugely significant. And I feel like myself and like many other trans people need to hear that at this moment in time, especially when like here in Queensland stuff's popping off. So And I really appreciated that in terms of like the retelling of our trans stories, and kind of like you talked about, like with trans history, how we have to kind of mine for our stories. Yeah, did you want to like, I don't know, walk me through that kind of, I guess, intentionality and that kind of like the way that you said about like transing myths that were already inherently quite queer and trans?
Yeah, it was like, it was actually just a process of stripping back, really, because you had these stories, they were all really from Ovid's Metamorphoses, and Ovid's telling of those stories is just so often like coated in this shame that he has imposed upon these characters, that's his voice, that's not their voice. And so I think just kind of trying to push past the bullshit of opinion, of like these men's opinions about who these characters are, and going, hold on, if I can just fucking drown your voice out and try and listen to the characters themselves. The bones of all these stories, there's no shame. I mean, there is like in how we experience it day to day, but there's no like all that kind of, how disgusting am I, blah, 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 blah. These men have put those words in these mythological characters' mouths, and so it's just going, oh, hold on, actually I'm just going to take that voice away and put my opinion on top of the bones of these stories, which is obviously that I think being trans is great and like being queer is great.
Yeah, and I feel like that kind of first person perspective from each of the characters was so important, because it reclaims that voice, and like there is that lack of shame, and I feel like so much transphobia is rooted in shame. I'm not
big time.
I'm not about it.
Yeah.
0 out of 10.
0 out of 10. Yeah.
Is there because I think I can't remember if it was maybe in the acknowledgements or somewhere that I read that you've got a whole bunch more like myths that you wrote that you didn't include in this book. Myself and probably listeners and also my book group were like wanted to know, is there a second book or anything else that's like you're writing at the moment?
Yeah, so there is another book, but it's got nothing to do with this one. It's a novel, and I've just started. I'm a slow writer, so it'll be a long time before it sees the light of day. But I just started that. That's with the shed as well, and then
amazing.
Yeah, I mean, people keep saying like, will there be more of these myths? And I hope so. I think I got to get this done first. Like, this is where my heart is at the moment. But I really hope so, because there was no. I didn't write any other myths, but I had a long list of myths to choose to write.
I see.
There were so many. There were so many queer myths that I was like, oh, do I do this one? Do I do this one? Anyway, so volume 2, one day.
I was gonna say I reckon so. I mean, look, I was like, I know like at least 20 people who would be enthused. But I think that would be beautiful, and like especially like the more things become kind of like fucked up in this world, and especially around like trans rights being, taken away and stuff. Like I think, rewriting and like writing our own histories is so important, and like books like this are so important. If listeners want to follow like your amazing work, and also we didn't even get a chance to talk about like all your acting and stuff. I was like, is there anything?
I've talked about that plenty.
Yeah. Because I was like, if there's anything cool happening on that front that listeners might want to know about, feel free to give a shout out, or where like listeners can contact you, like or like follow you and stuff on the dreaded social media.
The dreaded socials. Yeah, you can follow me at Zoe Terakes on Instagram, and come to the play. I'm acting in it. I'm playing Hermaphroditus in the first half. And then a beautiful trans girl will be playing her in the second half. But come to that if you can. If you're in town, come on.
Amazing. I honestly feel like my brain's like, should I just like do a little trip in January? Why not? And look, we'll yeah, I was like, little road trip. Also, you know, any kind of trans festival, I'm like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah, fucking oath.
Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we? Yeah.
No, I'm stoked. Yeah, thank you for such a beautiful
books.
question. Love books. Love talking to trans people about books.
Oh yeah,
It's so excellent.
Is there any trans books that you're like pumped about at the moment?
Always
you've read?
Yeah, Queens of Sarmiento Park by Camila Sosa Velada. Forever. And her other book of short stories, I'm a Fool to Want You. Those two books, forever. She's amazing. People need to get around her. She is a life-changing author.
God, when you read something that's life-changing like that, I know the feeling, and I can't believe I haven't read those. So I'll get on it.
Get into it. She's awesome. She's awesome.
I was like, yeah, listeners, get amongst it. Let's go.
Let's go.
Thank you so much for chatting with me today. And listeners, we will put all of that amazing info in our show notes as well, so you can follow Zoe's pursuits. Thank you so much.
Thanks, mate.
My name is Ray. I use they, them pronouns, and you're listening to Tranzmission on 4ZZZ. And I have a fantastic guest in with me this morning. I was going to say this afternoon. It's definitely still morning. I feel like I've been here for many years in the most positive, loving 4ZZZ way. I have an amazing guest with me this morning. Would you like to introduce yourself and your pronouns?
Hi, I'm Reizor, and I use she and they pronouns.
You're from Newcastle. And
yes, I'm from Moolabimba, Newcastle.
Amazing. And you are an RPG maker, a zine maker, a poet. You do many, many different things.
Yeah, I'm a multidisciplinary artist.
Multidisciplinary artist. Yeah. That's what it's very fancy way of saying it. Do you want to tell me a bit more about what you do and why you do it?
Yeah, so I'm a multidisciplinary artist, as I said a minute ago. I have an arts background in performing arts and theatre going back to childhood, and have had weird careers and things like that, weird little... Well, not even careers, jobs. And yeah, and all of that informs my art practice. But at the moment, my primary art focuses are poetry and tabletop game creation. Tabletop games, specifically tabletop role-playing games. So if you're familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, that's an example of a tabletop role-playing game. It's sort of like the AFL of tabletop role-playing games.
That's the most beautiful. I'm going to quote you on that. That's fantastic.
Except that it's not Australian; it's American. So really, it's the gridiron or the baseball of role playing games.
I love that, and my brain is like, I just had this moment of, I know very little about sports. I also love how you said before, like you've had like a lot of different like jobs and things. I feel like that's a very trans mood where we kind of
100%,
and also a very millennial mood. There's always like we always have trillions of different jobs that we've kind of patchworked together over time. But I'm glad that these jobs, these pursuits of RPGs and poetry and stuff are going well.
Yeah, there's this idea I heard, and it was actually relayed to me from someone who was talking about ADHD, because people with ADHD often pick up a bunch of hobbies and stuff, and there's a lot of regret of like, I picked up a hobby and then I abandon it. One, I don't have that. Two, this person was saying it all comes back. Especially if you're an artist, but also just generally, you never learn a useless skill. We talk about skills and stuff as being useless because, like, what's the practicality? But it's never actually useless. It always helps in some way, and it always comes back. Case in point, I spent 6 months as a blacksmith's assistant, specifically an industrial blacksmith, making drill bits for mining companies. and with the hopes of maybe becoming an apprentice or whatever, abandoned that.
Yes.
Because mostly the working conditions, really. But then I actually wrote a single-page supplement for a game, a fantasy game, that provided you some extra backgrounds to players. And in that, it was about backgrounds as before becoming a fantasy adventurer, you were some kind of artisan. And the two example ones in it were pretty sure a mason and a blacksmith. And so, drawing from my personal experiences and stuff, as well as my love of history, because I put in a bunch of stuff there about like what apprenticeships and journeyman was like historically. And
I do feel like you were talking before about there's no useless skills, and like it's all in my head. I had this vision of this pigeon just kind of pecking for the good seeds, but then being like, there's no bad seeds. There's always going to be like, even if
it
the
always
seed
comes
is...
back to birds with you, doesn't it?
It does, yes.
Yes, indeed. I mean, like, even juggling, right? People will say that juggling's a pointless skill. When I was a kid, I didn't juggle, but I did play around a lot with fire twirling and stuff. I also had a condition known as motodyspraxia, which is the two hemispheres of your brain have difficulty communicating complex actions that require coordination across like two different actions on either side of the body. Very hard to coordinate. Not impossible. The playing around with fire twirling actually builds the neural pathways across the hemispheres of the brain. And learning to play piano. I never became a professional piano player, and in fact do not play the piano now, even for fun. But all of those things helped make my hand-eye coordination better. And even though a bunch of it was just fooling around, so that's an example of how like a useless skill is useful.
And I feel like it also, this is not on topic of what I was wanting to talk to you about, but at the same time, I'm like, I do feel like that, there is no useless skill, and it also it gives your life texture and colour and, things that, like, even if it's something that, you're not necessarily doing something with, it's good to have as a flavour of life.
Totally. I mean, the idea of things needing to be useful comes from, like, capitalism and Protestant work ethic and all that bullshit.
Exactly. And I think there's that kind of idea that we have to be useful. Yeah,
it doesn't even need to be useful. But like, if you need to justify it to yourself, if you need to help alleviate that shame and guilt, it'll be useful eventually. It is all useful.
And in terms of your RPGs that you've written, do you want to give me a breakdown of your current back catalogue and kind of what you're working on at the moment?
I have, I think at last count, I have created 20 or 30 RPG projects that are published.
Which is many.
Self-published, but still. That's a lot. I mean, a lot of those are small things. Some of them are like single-page zine format stuff. A lot of my work is science fiction or science fiction adjacent, but not exclusively. A project I'm currently working on, a large project. It's called a meta series called the Solar Cold War, which is so far made up of 2 role-playing games, and they're large format role-playing games, so 60-page books as quick start versions. It's also a setting document, a poetry collection, a bunch of other things. They're all in this shared universe, the Solar Cold War setting. But all of the works in the Solar Cold War explore themes of space colonization, anti-colonialism, anarchist utopia, intersectional utopia, anti-capitalism, anti-fascism, anti-imperialism, and it's sort of aspirational science fiction, but without the whole we've solved all the problems. It's like, no, there's still problems that need to be solved, but it's clear that we're on a good track, and it's more about stopping other people from interfering with our shit.
Because I feel like there is often with science fiction, fantasy, and I find this when I read books at least, just that kind of wish fulfillment of everything's kind of tied up neatly with the bow, or it's very, everything's going extremely well, and I think that that's not necessarily... It's not the vibe you're going for, and I think that's really good.
Yeah, but at the same time, I don't want it to just be like grim and dark and it sucks. Like, it actually rocks hard to live in the hero faction of the Solar Cold War. Like, it's pretty awesome living in the GGC, but people still have to work hard, and there are still conflicts to overcome because they are not. Weirdly, because they're not expansionists and domineering, they're like, well, we can't just kill all the capitalists, but also we can't let them mess with our shit. So we have to there's this constant push and pull between capitalism as an existential threat to everything that isn't capitalist, because capitalism cannot tolerate things outside its paradigm, while at the same time the GGC rejects hegemony and domination. And so it's like, well, we can't just go and remove the capitalism. We have to create the conditions that the people living under capitalism can change their own society for the better. And how do we achieve that without sacrificing our own morality and our own principles? Which
honestly I feel like is something for people to think about, like in our current climate. Like, I think there's, a way to,
all science fiction is ultimately not about even science fiction that imagines the future is not about the future. It is about now. Like, all science fiction is about now. Even when it is suggesting stuff about ideal futures and things, it's still really about now. It's always about now.
And I think, asking those kinds of questions of, like, how can we live under capitalism, and, like, for trans people, like, how can we live in a world that, is brewing with transphobia, and how can we continue to look after each other and be our authentic selves. I feel like a lot of your work deals with those kinds of themes as well. And, like, I was going to ask, how does, this is a loaded kind of question, but how
I would
does,
hope
like,
so.
how does transness kind of feature in your work, and how does being trans kind of reflect in what you do?
Yeah, look, I think my previous large project, Make Our Own Heaven, which is a biopunk angel RPG, extremely about trans identity and queer identity and found family and the rejection of what society wants you to be, embracing the beauty in body horror and being seen as monstrous. For me, like Make Our Own Heaven, that's like really front of house for me, even though at no point am I explicitly saying all of the angels are transgender. It's like, no, they don't have to be. But the trans messaging is there in it. I think similarly, there's a huge focus in the Solar Cold War series on intersectionality, and which, like, is something I often feel is lacking in Star Trek, for example. Star Trek is a great example of, like, a utopian science fiction thing, and I often describe it as it's socialism written by liberals, and by liberals I don't mean the Australian term. I mean, like, the broader political term. Like, it's, I guess the Australian equivalent would be it's socialism written by Labor voters.
Also quotable,
but it often, not always, lacks intersectionality in it, and it had to, like, come around to intersectionality from a long way. It's like it's stuff like Star Trek's early rejection of, like, religion, and as, like, an atheist and a open anti-theist, I would say that Star Terakes' rejection of religion and religious people in its early days is like a fault of it. And is a fault of mine too in the past. Like I was quite what I call a militant atheist, which is a stupid term because, even Richard Dawkins, not actually militant, just an asshole.
It's like...
he's not out there, making bombs for atheism, which would be, kind of counterproductive. Just a little bit.
I feel like there's a zine in that.
Totally, but there's this perception of like if you're there's a perception of atheism as like white and as like falling in step with the Christian hegemony, the white hegemony of the West at the moment. When like there are atheist movements everywhere where there is religion, and like. But my point is that Star Trek has lacked intersectionality, and like that's something that I wanted to make sure that I avoided in my thing. I wanted this utopian future to feel like anyone could be there as long as you're not a capitalist or a fascist. In which case, move back.
Move on, my friend.
I was actually reading some notes I wrote on the game earlier, and on the itch page for it at the bottom, there's a section that says this game is explicitly anti-fascist, anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist. If you have a problem with that, this is not the game for you, because I got a lot of comments on Make Our Own Heaven from people being like, is this actually a game or is this just your political tirade? I'm like, it's both, actually.
What if both?
Yeah. And Make Our Own Heaven isn't even as political. Like the Solar Cold War series is like everyone is explicitly political. The third game that is planned for the project, its current like working title is West Wing in Space. Which it will be very different to the West Wing because the West Wing is extremely centrist.
I love a very accurate working title. I think we'll go to a couple of tracks now and then we'll come back and keep chatting with Reizor about all of her amazing work. We're going to go now to Void with the track Anatomy of a Hug. You're listening to Transmission on 4ZZZ.
Open Doors Youth Service is a Southeast Queensland support service for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender and or intersex youth aged 12 to 24 and their families. Open Doors believes that all young people have the right to explore, experience and express their gender and sexuality in safe and supportive environments, and offers a range of programs and counselling services, as well as support services for parents of LGBTI youth and community education and training. For more information, visit their website at www.opendoors.net.au. Sponsors of 4ZZZ.
My name is Ray, I use they, them pronouns, and you are listening to Transmission on 4ZZZ. And I'm still chatting with my incredible guest here in studio. Do you want to introduce yourself and your pronouns?
Yes, I'm Reizor, she, they, and don't worry, listeners, I have been reminded that I'm not meant to swear.
Which is, yes, it is. We can swear so long as there is a little bit of warning in case we have some sensitive ears listening, which is fair. But no, it's wonderful to have you in the studio today. And we were talking before about RPGs and all the incredible works that you've made. I think you said, like, was it 20, 30 RPGs? I think it's close to 30 if you include, like,
amazing ancillary products, so like expansions and stuff for other people's work.
Which is, and you do a lot of like collaboration and community work and stuff like that, and you're also a poet. Did you want to talk about like some of your collaborations thus far and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I don't get to collaborate as much on my role-playing game work, although at the moment I last year joined a sort of, we'll call it arts collective, specifically focused on role-playing games. So we've been doing a bit more than that, a bit more collaboration stuff there. But interestingly, a lot of my poetry writing began in collaboration. And my zine writing began in collaboration. So the first kind of zine product I made was in collaboration with a zine maker and poet from Brisbane, and we worked on a board game together called...
You are allowed to say it's me.
Oh, I'm allowed to say it's... Oh, cool, brilliant. Yeah. Yeah, so Ray and I made this...
We have worked together
Ray
before.
taught me how to make zines and got me interested in writing poetry again, having not written any poetry since I was in high school. And it was bad, not just because for all the normal reasons, but also for a bunch of other reasons. But my new stuff is a bit better.
And I do feel like poetry in high school isn't terribly inspiring. And then when you realise that, like...
It's also not very inspired. Like, it's pretty derivative stuff.
And then you're like, my God, there's, queer and trans poets out there who I can, like, chat to and read their work. And you're like, oh, my God, this is incredible. Oh, I could write this.
Yeah, indeed. So
gateway drug
on both cases. It started with a lot of collaboration. I think I've had like 3 poems published by people, not me, and those were all collaborations.
Actually,
except for the one that was in Long Trek, which was actually a poem that I wrote for the Solar Cold War. No, they ended up publishing Ashes. Sorry, I was thinking of Gardens of Troy, but they published Ashes.
And Long Trek is actually a really lovely online journal that's run by one, if not 2, gender diverse people. I can't remember exactly who runs it, but if not more, gender diverse people. So yeah, that's really beautiful.
So I've been writing. It's interesting. I've been writing poetry, I think, now since 2018. But it's always sort of been. It's definitely been my the other art practice that I've been engaging with while doing game stuff. But it's kind of always taken a back seat, whereas this coming year I'm going to try and focus primarily on poetry writing, just because I keep doing poetry gigs and not having anything to sell to people when I'm there. Like, they all want to buy my book, and I'm like, I got nothing for you. Do you want to buy a role-playing game?
It's like this thing that's completely different to what I just read out. Do you want that? But I mean... I do love the fact that, and this is bringing it back to what we have done before, is that you and I made a poetry role-playing game, and well, I don't know if I would call it a role-playing game.
It's not a role-playing game. It's a
experiment.
board. It's a board game more so than it's a role-playing game.
Yeah, and I do think that the two do marry quite well together, as many art forms do.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm currently setting up for next year to work on maybe finally finishing my space poetry collection, which will hopefully also, just as ancillary byproduct, also mean that I'll end up writing other stuff for Solar Cold War, as well as a couple of other projects. Because I always am jumping around between multiple projects. But yeah, I'm going to try and focus on that for next year. Not really sure what that's going to look like, but we'll figure that out in January. That's a January job.
Yeah, and I feel like, it can be, a bit of an organic project, like in terms of like how it's kind of...
As well,
how you approach it, yeah.
Sometimes it takes me forever to write something, or even to build up the mood to write something. Not even the mood. A game designer friend of mine calls it. So my a lot of my prep is kind of a lot of just sort of sitting around and waiting. But a game designer friend of mine calls it filling the toolbox, which is when you consume media adjacent to the thing you're trying to create, so that your brain is full of all of the stuff, and then you can just sort of start pulling it out.
It's like stocking your pantry when you've just gone and done a big shop.
Yeah. It's a lot easier to think of what to make when you've got well, for me anyway, when I've got a lot of ingredients. I caught myself, listeners.
A shocking lot
a shocking load.
I think that's really interesting, though.
A shipload.
Because... And honestly, I do find the same kind of thing. I'll be it's almost like, once again, the pigeon metaphor, but like I'm picking up
It always
seeds,
comes back
I'm
to
like
birds.
gathering like lots of different things while like thinking about what I want to write and like the premise or the format or the vibe of the whatever project it is that I'm going for. And then suddenly it all kind of like falls into place and then I smash out in, you know, like a decent period of time, like kind of...
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, last year I was very fortunate. I was asked to take part in the Red Dirt Poetry Festival out in Mbantua, Alice Springs. And as part of that, I needed to write a piece for it. And I'm just like, they wanted me to write something inspired by a song. And I actually ended up writing something that was inspired by like 4 or 5 songs because that was easier for me than writing something inspired by one. But after after that trip, I got a lot more. I realized I wanted to be way more involved in the community back in where I'm from, Mulabimba on Warramai country, and I so both went on this search to do more poetry stuff, and the poetry stuff there was not to my liking, so I was going to a lot of open mics that were primarily music focused, and then be like, can I do some poetry? And like, oh yeah, that'd be great.
Oh, yeah?
And then getting more involved in via that, and then also getting more involved in like local activist community. As you might know, Rising Tide is based in Newcastle, and they held their big blockade there. So, you know, hanging out with some of them until I could find the even more radical activists in the area. So I've been involved a lot with both community fundraising and direct action for Palestine, and also helped do a fundraiser for Kanaki, which you might know as New Caledonia, Free Kanaki, free all occupied territories. And that sort of inspired a lot of both poetry work and you know, game work as well.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, do you find it kind of, it sort of all intersect? And
hey,
like,
it all comes back, right?
Yeah.
Just throwing back to the earlier conversation, it all comes back.
And especially when like so much of protest is rooted in poetry and like vice versa, or like poetry is rooted in protest. Like, I feel like there's, you know, we don't have, personally for me, I don't have one without the other. Like, so much of my artistic practice is about activism.
Yeah, a lot of the poetry gigs I did this year have been like, hey, Reizor, can you do a reading at this vigil for Palestine? I'm like, yeah, let me find some Palestinian work to read. And then I'll do, you know, one of my own pieces after I've read some Palestinian work. And then also did like a cabaret to raise money for Palestinian families. That was pretty cool, and stuff like that. And it's interesting, like going back to the filling the toolbox thing. I've spent this whole year filling my head with stuff and experiencing stuff about, you know, understanding more deeply the anti-colonial struggles around the world, in particular Palestine and Kanaki. And that was very useful when I needed to write 3 pieces for a performance at a gallery that I did a couple of weeks ago. So it was an exhibition of various works by some Palestinian artists, 3 sort of similar exhibitions in this one small gallery space. And I wanted to write a poem for each exhibition. And my plan was to like come in 2 hours before and sit in the space and everything. But I had already seen the pieces, and I'd done the gallery opening as well. And then when I got there on the day, buses and stuff meant that I was late. So I got there like 30 minutes before we were meant to start. God. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'll go over. I'll just go over to the gallery right now, and I'll sit in there. I walk over to the gallery, which we were going to open for the night to do the performances in. It's still locked. Oh, and I'm like, I don't have time. I got to start. So I just start writing, and thankfully my brain was so full of all of the information from, you know, the last year. intense work for me, that I was able to like tease that out. And my friend walked by and was like, "Oh, did you need to get into the gallery?" I'm like, "I did, but it doesn't matter now.
I did, but I'm on a roll. Hang on.
I have written 3 poems in 10 minutes, and they were bangers."
I love that. I think that's like when we spoke to Key from Echoes from the Cave In and talked about how at that open mic there's the 5-minute speed poetry round. And I always find that sometimes when I have that time pressure, that's when I write the best stuff. I mean, I polish it later, but like also...
The second poem I wrote
fantastic.
for the Solar Cold War poetry series that I'm working on was actually written at Echoes from the Cave In. It was like a horror story about sinking into the bottom of the ocean of Europa, which is this like 1,000-meter deep ocean under the ice layer of Europa. That's a real place in our solar system. It's most likely to have complex alien life as well.
I was like, I'm here for more space poetry. But I'd love to ask you before I kick you out of the studio. How dare I? But honestly, it's been wonderful to have you in the studio today. Is there anything else you'd like to mention, or what you're doing next? Where can people find you? All that kind of jazz.
Yeah, look, I think the biggest thing to mention right now is that Queensland, like all governments, the Queensland government, like all governments on this continent, is an illegal settler colony. This land is and always shall be Indigenous land. All colonies will fall from Israel to Australia. Everywhere shall be free. Get yourself to that protest on Wednesday morning at 7 a.m.
Absolutely.
That's what I got for you.
Enough
about me. Get out there, get active. Remind politicians that they should be afraid of their people.
And I want to thank our incredible guests today. We had Zoe Terakes and Reizor chatting with me this morning. You're listening to Transmission on 4ZZZ.
Thanks for listening to Transmission. Catch us every Monday live on 4ZZZ from 10 a.m. or listen to our podcast on the Community Radio Plus app.